Thank you very much. We now have the one, the only, Dave MacNeel with Baker.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
All right. So who in the room has heard this case study presented before? I know there's a handful of you. How many times have you heard? Oh, twice for each hand. Well, this is a new one. This is an upgraded version, so this isn't the same one you've seen before. So there is some new stuff in this presentation. Real quick, I'm Baker's corporate lean champion, heavily involved with LCI, AGC, CII. Before I became the lean champion, I was an operations manager. I've been a project manager, superintendent, estimator, and project engineer for Baker in my 20-year career with them. So who is Baker? What do we do? Just real briefly, we're a subcontractor. I used to say it was a trades partner, but we haven't done an IPD project yet, so we're still a sub until we get our first IPD job. Turnkey frames is what we build. We build stuff out of concrete. 43 years in business, $70 million last year. Done 35 plus or minus lean projects. So the potential of lean. I say, and I was actually quoted in ENR in this last week on a Turner safety article that came out about a stand down about 50-20-20, saying, you know, lean has delivered for us easily 50% fewer injuries. We can do them 20% faster, and we can save 20% in cost. And the cool thing is you don't usually just get one or the other of those. Usually you get all three if they're doing it well. And those numbers are actually fairly ratcheted down. The first year of safety, we had a 78% safety advantage for jobs that were doing lean than jobs that were not. We've done things 78% faster in formwork and things, and costs have been 50% better in some areas. But those are good averages. But it harkens back to something I heard Greg Howe say in a presentation, and he kind of paraphrasing, but he said, if there's anything I've learned about lean over the last, I forget what he said, 20-something years, it's these two things. One, lean is hard to do. Lean is hard to do. And two is results don't sell. So we'll see where these results go today. And I would agree with Greg that lean is hard to do. So our journey, real quickly, started looking into lean in 2005. 2006, attended a 2-day seminar that Greg and Glenn put on in Cynthia in Cincinnati. 2007, we decided to pilot it in the Midwest on one project. 2008, because of the success on that project, we decided to make it a regional initiative in the Midwest region, right around Ohio. 2010, expanded it to the Mid-Atlantic here in DC and South Florida. So the project, the case study that I'm going to be talking about happened in between there. It basically happened in 2009. Last year, expanded it to our southern region, which is mainly the Gulf Coast. So to give you a little bit of background on this case, I'm going to explain a little bit about our training program, not go into any detail, just give you a little flavor for it. We call our lean training special forces. It's what sets us apart. It's what sets the lean crews apart from the traditional crews. We call them our special forces. And I even lifted the Army logo for special forces and changed a little bit. So it's definitely our lead and key personnel. It's our foremen, it's our superintendents, it's our project managers. Incident injury free is a baseline, just like Gilbane just spoke about that. That's your basic respect for people. You've got to have that. We conduct the lean boot camps with our crews. We do the book club with the Toyota Way. We read the Toyota Way by Jeffrey Liker. We definitely get into the last planner system, which is all about the pull planning, the sticky notes, the weekly work planning. We teach our foreman job instruction. That's TWI stands for Training Within Industry. It was a World War II program that taught people how to teach because the factories were being vacated by all the men that were being drafted or volunteering to go fight the war, and that was right at the time when we needed to ramp up all of our productivity. After action reviews as well, looking at the thing after we do it one time. Also could call that a first run study, but we like the military term, after action reviews. And we call this system Baker 2.0. It's an upgrade to our traditional system that we'd been operating on before 2007. We take our crews to Toyota in Georgetown. If you haven't been, I highly suggest you go to the Toyota plant in Georgetown, Kentucky, and see them making Camrys, and you see all these tools in operation. We play Legos. Sitting at that table are 3 foremen, a superintendent, a project engineer, a line and grade engineer, and a project manager, building airplanes to learn the lean philosophies. The last planner meetings, A lot of written, a lot of coloring on the board. You see them coloring in some things. We do a lot more coloring than we do sticky notes. It just seems to resonate more with our crews. After-action reviews, this is a crew conducting an after-action review at Gemba, at where the work is, where the value is being added to the work. And they're 9 stories up in a concrete core, not back down on the ground in a trailer. We share our practices where we can. This is a superintendent and a decking foreman going over a incident that happened on a project in North Carolina. This picture was taken in DC, I know because I took it. And they're talking about a failure of some decking that collapsed. Nobody was hurt, but they were using that same material, so they sent a bulletin out to every job that we had that was using that kind of material saying, don't do what this job in North Carolina did because your decking could fall down. So that's a little bit about the people, about the training, what we do with them. So here's the case itself. It's ThyssenKrupp Steel Mill, Mount Vernon, Alabama. Our crews lovingly refer to that as LA, Lower Alabama. Huge project. It's like 5 miles, literally 5 miles from one end to the other of it. We poured overall on that site 415,000 cubic yards. Big chunk, yeah. The case study, if you can see there, is those 2 buildings. They're starting to take the shape of each other, and they're actually identical buildings. Very, very, for all intents and purposes, they're identical. And they're about 50 feet away from each other on the same site. So they're hot dip galvanizing lines, they're big equipment foundations. The one with the blue arrow was done traditionally. The one with the yellow arrow was done using lean tools, lean processes. So the situation, those packages were our 5th and 6th packages that we had gotten on the site. Took our contract on site to over $210 million. We actually had 985 craftsmen at one point on the site, big site. It depleted the resources of our industrial group. They were scrambling for people, but it was good work, and we needed the work at the time, so we were really scrambling to get people. So when we bid this last chunk, we got a call saying that they're not going to give us this job unless we can prove that we can staff it with people that aren't already on the job. They didn't want us to water down the other crews and then have them fall down on their faces. So a call was made up to the Midwest. I had some people available. I said, sure, I'll loan you 2 of these guys that I have. And the 2 guys are these 2 guys, Jim and Joe. So this is really a story about Jim and Joe. Jim on the left, he's a project manager with a superintendent type background. Joe on the right, superintendent with kind of a surveying background. Both of them in their mid-30s, or early 30s actually. Their mission was not to spread lean to the project they were going to. They had experience with lean on 2 projects. Their mission was to help them get this job done. Jim was supposed to order rebar and embeds. Joe was supposed to be a layout engineer. That's all they were supposed to do. So this is what the site looked like when they got there, May 17th, 2009. You can see the traditional line in blue. There's some work that's already in place. You can see some concrete's been poured, and there's actually structural steel being set. You can see a 1 bay of steel is being set vertically. If you look up on the yellow piece, there's a couple holes that have been dug. That's just getting ready to get started. So that's what they were sent for. All right, this is one of the new things to the presentation. The Dulong Bridge. Does anybody know where the Dulong Bridge comes from? It's a movie, 1979, Apocalypse Now. Great movie, I love the movie. So the movie Apocalypse Now, the story, if you haven't seen it, is they're going up this river in Vietnam. They're supposedly supposed to cross over into Cambodia. And they get to this last army outpost, which is the Dulong Bridge. And as they're pulling up at night, there's all this chaos going on, and there's just shooting and flares, and there's actually soldiers swimming out with suitcases saying, take us home, this is a disaster, and they kind of shoo them away, and they dock. They go walking around there, and they're looking around, and they just see this thing, it's just in chaos. They're shooting randomly. They're told that they have to rebuild the bridge every day because they blow it up at night. And it's just a mess. So I'd say that most of our traditional jobs, they're much like the Dulong Bridge. They're just in chaos. It's just, they're like, who's in charge, you know? And they don't know who's in charge. They're firing randomly. So when they get there, they're seeing the Dulong Bridge is what's happening on the one side. So what are we doing there? We kind of take the hole looking like this. It's been sheeted and shored with the soldier piles and lagging. There's caissons drilled, and that's where we start. We start building the foundations, the bottoms of the equipment foundations, and then eventually we get it up to grade level. That's our job. And just looking at that picture, you can tell that it violates batch integrity. It's a huge batch. It was, I forget how many thousands of yards it was, and they said it took them like 2 days to pour it. They wish they had broken it apart. This was the traditional line, by the way. And you can see the structural steel being set in the background behind the pour, right up against the concrete. So looking at the two structures, similarities, they're basically identical. 100,000 cubic yards on one, 100,000 cubic yards on the other, 50 feet apart. So the site and the weather are the same. The suppliers are all the same rebar suppliers, same steel suppliers. The engineer and the customers were the same and not lean. We were allowed to put one person that could look over both, and that was the superintendent. He could run both sides of this. So the differences, and there were some. The lean job started 3 months after the traditional one started. So the traditional one had a 3-month head start. The labor pool, the lean project got the bottom of the barrel. That was the last project to go on this site. So craftsman number 800 through 985 were the ones that went to this job. They didn't get the first 500. There were some lessons learned. They did some things out of sequence on the first one, and there were some design changes. So there was a little bit of lessons learned already from the original one. The management team was obviously completely different. One was an industrial group, one was a commercial lean trained group. The division cultures were very different. When the guys came and said they're going to try to teach them to do lean, I thought they were crazy. I thought they were going to get run out of there because it'd be something like Air Force guys going to tell Marines how to fight, and it just wouldn't work. So, and obviously the lean versus traditional. So what did Jim and Joe actually do? They convinced the superintendent to try something new, and that was last planner, basically. Pull planning, weekly work planning, get your act together. They brought in suppliers to help create these new delivery schedules, and they did it collaboratively. And they conducted lunch and learns. They started teaching them these Toyota Way principles to help them with what they were doing each week. So here's a picture of the lunch and learn. That's Jim on the far right, and he's pre-printed out some Toyota Way principles and how can we apply these. And he had been through it a couple times, so he had some lessons learned from his old Toyota Way book, and he brought those back and was kind of giving them fish. He wasn't teaching them to fish, he was just kind of giving them fish to get them started with lean. Then they came up with this very complex area identification system. I'll give you guys a minute to take it all in. Yeah, so they said, what's your problem? And they're like, we can't find anything. There are acres and acres and acres of rebar and anchor bolts and embeds all over the place. And they said, we got to clean it up. We got to start sorting it out. We got to start putting stuff in the right areas instead of just chucking it wherever you can. Like if you were on the Dulong Bridge, that's what you would do. You would just throw it off the boat. Now they're saying no. So here's a picture of a form area, some forms that were being built up. They're sorted, they're straightened, it's cleaned up, there's no trash. They're standardized, they're colored, the sizes are in the right area, and then they had to keep it up. That's the 5S. Embeds coming from a supplier, we had them pre-color code these when they came to us, so when the forklift driver took them off, he knew exactly where to go put those. He didn't have to look up a shipping ticket or anything like that. They were pre-color coded as they came to us. As we were building up formwork, we were even color coding that, so we knew which piece of the mill it was supposed to go to. Plus, the superintendents and foremen really liked that too, because they could tell when somebody was stealing their forms, and that does happen. The rebar deliveries, they sat down, like I said before, and with the suppliers and mapped out. The pink stickies on there are milestone dates for completion. The yellow, I believe, are needed on site dates, and the purple are release dates. So they had an agreement on this. This is the superintendent getting ready for the weekly meeting. He's not filling out a weekly work plan in writing. He's coloring it on a board behind plastic. Then the superintendent or the foreman would come in. They actually put a piece of plexiglass on their table, and they would slide the drawings underneath there, and they would color what they were going to get done next week. This was kind of neat. A foreman had some downtime, and he brought his crew in. the foreman being the last planner in the high-vis yellow, and brought his crew in to explain to him what was going on based on the coloring that they had done in the meeting the day before. So a quick quiz. What motivated the other 4 Baker teams on site to try lean? Remember, this was just one of 6 pieces. There were 5 other pieces on site, and they wanted to try lean. So I'm wondering if you guys can guess what motivated them to try this. A, mandated by corporate executives. Did any hands go up? Incentivized with large cash bonuses. The staff attended an LCI seminar. Maybe. Or D, their buddies on the lean team were getting to the bars much sooner. Anyone think it's not D? It's D, guaranteed. That's what was happening. The guys on the lean project were planning their work, and they were executing it in 8 hours, and they were getting to happy hour. The guys on the get her done, do long bridge side had the hair on fire. They're running around. They not know what they're doing. They're pouring at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and they're not getting to the bar for happy hour. And when they finally get there at 10 o'clock at night, our guys, or the lean guys, had been there for 5 hours, and they're plenty sauced by then, and they're jealous. So jealousy plays a big role in lean. Cooling circuits, this is one of the other chunks of work. I told you there were 5 or 6 other chunks. This is one of them, the big baths where they take the steel and molten hot and cool it down. So they were one of the teams that came in. That little red circle was what that picture was of. And so it's those blue areas. So they came to the lean trailer and looked around and saw some of the things and the writing and the plastic and the calendars and all this stuff. So they said, that's going to get us to the bar sooner. That's what we need to do. So they bought calendars, they bought plastic, they colored drawings, and they couldn't realize why they weren't getting to the bar any sooner. They did everything that the other guys were doing, right? Wrong. They didn't have Jim and Joe. That's what they didn't have. So here it is on October 28th. The inside had just finished pouring, and the lean project, you can see where the arrow's pointing is actually the last pour on that line. They finished within a week of each other. And the one, remember, had a 3-month head start. Peak manpower. The traditional project had 420 at its peak. The lean project never had more than 270. That's a picture of a blowout, which typically you don't see a lot of pictures of because people don't like to admit that something went wrong on their site, and they dumped 20 yards of concrete down in the basement. That wasn't a fun day, but they took pictures, they did an after-action review and figured out why they had this mistake, and they didn't make it again the rest of the time. So it brings me to some lessons learned. You can roll out lean at any stage. This was the last in the line of the projects. You don't have to follow the playbook exactly. Again, we like to color versus filling out weekly work plans. It's not about the tools. Obviously, it's not about the tools. It's really about those lean champions that drive it. It's about the Jims and the Joes. So if you want to know about how do you sustain lean, and sustaining it is actually very, very hard, my answer is create champions. Don't roll out tools. And when I go to coach teams, I don't say, I'm here to roll out last planner, I'm here to do pull planning. I'm here to make a champion. Who wants to be it? Which one of you at this table want to be the champion and take this when I'm gone? Yeah, I'll teach you all the stuff in the sticky notes, but that's my mission when I go to a project, is to make Jims and Joes. So what happened there? They engaged the field, instilled a vision, visually what they were going to do. They planned collectively instead of silos. And the project manager gave me this one. He said, what we really did was we created an environment for people to learn and to innovate. And we could see what the guys on the Dulong Bridge were doing, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do it differently over here. So some results. Safety record. Actually, both projects had almost the identical safety record, but when you compared it to the rest of the company, it was 65% better than our 2009 company average. Formwork rental, they used 75% less formwork on the lean project as they did on the traditional one, because they had time to recycle it and go back and get it instead of just leaving it behind. Yeah, we do that. Equipment rental, they used 28% less equipment, less lifts, less generators, because they were able to share. Everybody didn't have to have their own thing. The duration, it was 19% faster, the completion date, and the TK owner's rep said it's the fastest one's ever been built anywhere in the world. And they've done these, I think, in Russia, China, India. End of job overtime. This is the hair on fire at the end, flood the job with 400 people. 68% difference in end of job overtime. The traditional crew was just going crazy at the end trying to finish, and the lean crew just kind of walked across the finish line at the same time. Labor productivity, 12% better labor productivity, cubic yards per man hour. Costs, depending on the area or the activity, the way we had it broken out, the least amount of savings we had was 10% on an activity, and we had as much as 28%. When you rolled it all up into the whole project, the cost difference was actually 17.4%. So not quite the 20% that I said before, but close enough, right? We looked at formwork productivity alone, just the productivity of the forming crews, not the placing, not the reinforcing, just the forming. And we compared the yellow being the lean to the blue being the traditional, 8%, 29% for walls, 61% better for the columns. So again, the way I see that too is the less complicated it is, and the foundations were just kind of square boxes, the less of the savings, but there's still 8% still significant. But when you got more complex, that had more embeds, more anchor bolts, more craziness, more haunches, ugly forming, the more lean paid off. 29%, 61% better in formwork productivity. So why did it work? First of all, I'll say for sure it was luck. Preparation, the Jim and Joe met the opportunity, the Dulong Bridge project. They didn't know that it couldn't be done. Jim and Joe were just like, we're sick of it. We're not going to do it this way. There is a better way. We know it. And even though we're probably going to get told to go to heck because we're not from this area, you ain't from around here, that we're still going to try it anyways. And they did. They did have credibility. They were field guys. They were field guys talking to field guys. They took action. They just tried something. I think I've seen several presentations today that said, just try something, start anywhere, just do something, and that's what they did. They got some quick wins early on with that complex area identification system that they invented. And they started with the need. They started with what was their biggest thorn in their side, and they got that one out, then they went to the next one and started pulling the thorns out. And the pace that they rolled it out, KISS, keep it simple, stupid, or if you're dealing with your customer, it's keep it simple, sir. Don't go too hog wild on this stuff. Just take it easy. It'll come. All right, so epilogue. Which job was better? Obviously, I told you how great the lean job was, and it cost $30 million, basically. These are round numbers. You know, some of the data has been distorted to protect the guilty. The traditional one cost $35 million to build. Cost. We sold the one for $38 million, left us $3 million in profit, or 8.5%. We sold the other one for $32 million. It was the last in line, remember? So we only made $2 million on that job, or 6.7% gross profit. So, which job would a CFO like better? Probably the traditional one, right? He'd rather have $3 million in his pocket than $2 million. But it didn't take into consideration the sales price. The sales price changed everything. So what if the lean project performed like the traditional one? What if both were like the Dulong Bridge and they spent $35 million to get it done? It would have been a $3 million loss out of pocket. So I like that book, Moneyball. Has anybody read that? Great book. It talks about statistics and how they can be bent, and make sure you're looking at the right thing. Make sure you're looking at the cost delivery on the project, maybe not the bottom line. It may not tell you the whole story. Just a caution. Biggest obstacle to lean. I found this, and I like this. I say the greatest obstacle is to discovery is not ignorance or lack of intelligence. It's the illusion of knowledge. We already know how to do this. We've been doing lean for years, blah, blah, blah. No, it's thinking you already know it. You're thinking you already do it. Cautions, just know that lean requires discipline, perseverance, hard work. That's again why Greg said lean is hard. Results don't sell. Teams have to devote time and energy to making it better. Oops, sorry, went too fast. Payoffs are down the road. Lean is not a car wash, it's an investment. You're investing today so things run smoother, better down the road. So I like Greg used to have not this exact slide, but that question at the end of his presentation. So what is your level of ambition with lean? And you can make mall cops, right? In about an hour, you can show a mall cop how to use a billy club and a radio, right? Or do you want to put a real investment in and really invest in your people and make something like Special Forces? Those guys don't get made in a couple hours. That's years and years and years of training. That's the end. Thank you.
Make champions.
5S eliminates treasure hunts.
Visual progress tracking on floor plans.
Get to the bar faster.
You don't have to follow the playbook exactly.
Just the power of the two guys in the field, that they could really affect the whole project.
Using plexiglass tabletops to do weekly work planning.
Bring in suppliers to help create delivery schedules.
You can do it in LA. We know that from the California hospitals and LA, Alabama.
Yeah.
It's not about the tools. That's the only other one I did not hear is it's not the tools, it's it's the people. Yeah. Why 50% less? Why do we have such better safety? It's hard to say exactly, but I do know, like in the Gilbane example, you're exposing much less exposure. You're going down in the hole one time down the ladder. You're doing your work. You're coming out once at the end of the day. You're not up and down, up and down. You're doing these treasure hunts. You're looking for material. It's not a mess. You're not tripping over things. And it's planned out. The safety's planned as well. The safety is planned just like the productivity is planned. What formwork do I need? What embeds do I need? What anchor bolts? What harnesses do I need? What do I need for ladders? What do I need for access and egress? It changes the level of thinking a little bit. So I think it's mainly reducing exposure would be my biggest guess, but I really don't know. Why different sales prices? I skimmed over that a little bit, but they basically were, the first one was bid in packages. It was bid in pieces, and some of them weren't in the correct order of the deepest in building, so there was some rework on the first package that added to that contract value and change orders. The other one was the lean project. It was the last one, and we were going to have more craftsmen coming available from the first projects that had started. And we were set up, we were there, we had trailers, and there wasn't a whole lot of work coming out in this big industrial arena in 2009, so we went after it as well. So it was a combination of things, is why the sales prices were a little different. Is 5S a good place to start? Yes, absolutely. Dennis Sauer says, you can't even do lean if you're not doing 5S. If you don't have the place cleaned up, you're not organized, then you've got to do long bridge. It's a mess. It's a chaos if you don't have 5S. So I think 5S is a great place to start. Why didn't the other team borrow Jim and Joe? Well, Jim and Joe were in the firefight of their lives, just trying to do their own jobs on their own piece, trying to pour 100,000 cubic yards in what wound up being 6 months. So 100,000 cubic yards is basically 2 stadiums worth of concrete that they're pouring. So it would not be easy to just simply take them and transplant them. And plus, it was kind of an underground thing. They just kind of did it on their own, and it wasn't until much later that they realized they were getting to the bars sooner, that they had a different mousetrap. They had some different Kool-Aid over there. So it just wouldn't have been easy because of the job load to take them over there and train them. Plexiglass work plan. Oh, through the week. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was Todd's question. They would have an engineer that would go through after the foreman would color it up, and they'd write, okay, wall A, from here to here on Monday, here to here Tuesday, these columns on Wednesday, and then they would take it and make that a written weekly work plan. But we didn't force the foreman to do that. They got to color. Then we would send a project engineer through afterwards and walk up to each of their plans and then write out the plan, and that became the written plan afterwards. So. Did they transplant it, and how did that work? And you've seen it work the other ways, that the guys that have the skills lose it when they go to a job that's not run that way. I think is that kind of okay. They were convinced. They had done it on, like I said, 2 jobs. They'd each done 2 jobs this way. They were convinced that this is the best way to do this, and anything else is insane. And they even went against orders and everything else to do it, and to sell that superintendent. One thing I didn't say, too, is the superintendent was so overrun with the one line and the do-long bridge kind of scenario going on that these guys came one day and said, hey, we think we can try this last planner stuff and these weekly work plans and pull planning. And he just said, sure, whatever. Right? Kind of like your wife, can I get a motorcycle? Sure, you get a motorcycle. No, you can't get a motorcycle. No, but he was so overrun with work that he was actually able to do that. And he said, sure, if you think it's going to make it better, I'll try anything. You know, if you say sprinkle purple fairy dust, we'll do it. If it's going to make it my life easier because I'm working 16, 18 hours a day, I'll do it. So that's kind of softened it. What happened to Jim and Joe? Joe is still with us. He's now on his 4th or 5th project, lean project. He runs the meetings. I just get reports every now and again on their PPC, which is usually in the mid to high 80s. Jim has left the company, unfortunately, found some other opportunities, and he has taken lean to that company. So he keeps sending me pictures of boards and things that he's doing at his new company, and I couldn't be happier for Jim. So that's what's happened to the two of them. Thank you very much.